It's time for 1UPdate on Culture Shift.
Welcome back to the 1UPdate on WDET. Joining us now, I'm so excited to welcome this guest to the program. He is the conductor and the music director for Distant Worlds, which is coming to the DSO on Thursday, June 29th. Tickets available over at dso.org. Arnie Roth, welcome to the 1UPdate.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, thank you so much for some of your time today. So, what is the biggest challenge when adapting video game music to play to play with an orchestra, right? Like, I think people tend to think of video game music as, you know, beeps and boops and sort of this one type of thing. What does it take to get that ready for an orchestra to adapt?
So there's a wide range of what would be the word? A wide range of states of development that various video games use. You could go all the way back to the beginning of the Final Fantasy 1 through 6, 7 even, that were just using 8-bit computer generated sounds, not even, it's a little chip that had 3 or 4 voices available in it. And look at what Nobuo Uematsu did with that and marvel at it. But the reality is that needed a tremendous amount of adaptation to move it onto the concert hall stage. Whereas starting with Final Fantasy VIII all the way through the present and many other video games, they have 16-bit, they're recording full audio. And those that their style warrants it, they're using full orchestrations as well with either orchestra, rock band, whatever it might be. But that's recorded for the game. The main difference there is that they're shorter bits of music. They're not full concert arrangements. They might be 90 seconds long and in a loop. They might be maybe a little longer for a main anthem, or a main statement. So we're adapting those themes to move them into a full concert length. I can speak from the standpoint of Distant Worlds. We're kind of a unique situation. We present all the Final Fantasy music as close to the way they heard it in the original as possible. That means that we're using individual songs, and there are thousands of them, of course, in the Final Fantasy series. So by using individual songs, that means that our average length might be anywhere from 3 minutes to 5 or 6 minutes. Some of them longer, some of them on the shorter side, or medleys that use several different themes over an 8-10 minute period. So in terms of adapting things, that's the gamut. The early stuff, the 8-bit stuff requires more work. But that's what makes the achievements of Nobuo Uematsu so much more remarkable. I'd like to reference in Final Fantasy VI, he has something like 40 or 45 minutes of opera in Final Fantasy VI. And of course, he couldn't record a human voice during that point. So how do you do opera, I mean, as you know, he would have a computer chip playing, a compelling operatic melody, and he would have Maria on the parapet of the castle, and a little dialogue bubble would pop up with the words that she's singing, and a little note would be next to it, a little graphic note, and you're hearing the actual melody that she would be singing. Ba-da-dee-dum, ba-da-da-yum. You're hearing that with the lyrics there. So he's implying an operatic aria. And he did this, throughout the entire early set of Final Fantasy game releases. What we now have is a full orchestrated version of that opera. And he worked very closely in the early days with Shiro Hamaguchi, the arranger that did so much of the famous orchestration work with him, Liberi Fatale, One Winged Angel, all the opera, all that stuff was orchestrated by Hamaguchi. And Distant Worlds tries to emulate the style of that early orchestration and arrangement all the way through Final Fantasy 15, and now 16 is coming out in just another week or so.
Yeah, just another couple of weeks, right before the performance.
Right.
And you mentioned Nobuo Uematsu and his amazing work throughout the entirety of the Final Fantasy series. Is there something about the Final Fantasy series specifically, because I know you've also worked with other video game music as well, that specifically kind of lends itself to be played by an orchestra?
Well, yes. I mean, part of that is the style that Nobu established from the beginning. We like to say with Nobuo Uematsu, everything is melody and structure first. That's the first thing that happens. You know, he didn't have a strict classical upbringing, but it's well publicized. His champions are classic rock like Elton John, um, the Beatles, things that were very strong melody and structure um, episodes. And his classical influences, Tchaikovsky, he lists, Prokofiev, um, all Brahms, all the big melody writers, right? And he is a romantic, a sentimentalist. I mean, if you listen to any of his music, that thread is going through there. There's great battle medleys and themes, but there's very touching, intimate um, episodes. And some of his most famous compositions are based in that style, like Aerith's theme, Xanarkand. These are things that people are crying over still to this day when we play it live. So the fact that he was a composer that started with a great melody and structure is the reason why it's easier to orchestrate that stuff for the concert stage. There's a natural evolution to the melody. It spins itself out in a symmetrical way, and it develops the B theme and all those things. They're very classically written, and that makes this stuff much easier from our standpoint. It's more difficult when we're really trying to orchestrate a sound sculpture, or there's many composers that write more soundscapes for their video game scores. And that's a more difficult thing in terms of orchestration, because it can go so many different ways. There's so many variables. You can do it, but to draw the attention of the audience for this orchestration and this arrangement on the concert hall stage, it needs more bones and more structure, and he has that for us, even all the way back to Final Fantasy 1. So, and all the songs that he's done, these are all just, very, very structured, orchestrated pop songs. They're very, very much fun. And Susan, of course, is going to be singing a bunch of those with our Detroit concert. She's going to be doing one of the older ones, Eyes on Me from Final Fantasy VIII, big famous song. And she'll also be doing one of her anthems. I think we have Dragon Song this time. She's done Answers quite a bit, and we want to start doing more Dragon Song as well. But the good news is that we're starting to get more and more scores from Masayoshi Soken and 14. So we will be featuring some new scores there on the Detroit stage. We're going to be doing from Final Fantasy 14, we're doing Invincible, and we're also doing, what's the other one? Triumph.
That's really exciting. I'm a Final Fantasy 14 player myself. I have been for many, many years. You can see the promo stand behind me. It's a huge, played a huge part in my life, and that's so exciting to hear. We're currently speaking with Arnie Roth, the conductor of Distant Worlds, coming to the DSO. on Thursday, June 29th. You can get tickets over at dso.org. Arnie, you mentioned just a moment ago the depth of the music in Final Fantasy, literally thousands of different songs to choose from. How do you pick a playlist? How do you pick what you're going to perform for Distant Worlds?
Right. I mean, that's always a difficult question, actually. So here's the parameters. Here's the rules with all that. The original guideline with Distant Worlds was that our understanding with both Nobu and Square Enix was that we wanted to try to represent as much of the series as we could within each concert. So it wasn't originally to be focused on one game or several games, but, a wide swath of the series. So I have that factor. I have the other factor is how great of an orchestra do we have? How great of a chorus do we have? Do we have any soloists with us? How long is their performance before they go into overtime, the orchestra? All these are factors with all these things. So, and what did we perform the last time we were in that city? Or have we ever been to that city or not? What are the new releases from Square Enix and on Final Fantasy series? All these kind of get into a big pot, and we try to decide the best course of action for that. We know how popular Final Fantasy 14 is. We know that Susan lives in the Detroit area. So those things together are making me feature a little bit more of Final Fantasy 14 on that Detroit concert. But to say that, we're also doing a new medley that we were just featuring during 35th anniversary, which is all the great battle medleys, battle themes from Final Fantasy 1 through 6 that Nobuo Uematsu himself put together for the 35th anniversary concerts. So we're bringing that to Detroit. We're bringing some Final Fantasy 7 remake to Detroit as well. We're able to play all that stuff. It falls under the banner of Distant Worlds. So what's fun is, as Distant Worlds, now we're 15 years, going on 16 years in existence and more. They're allowing us, Square Enix is allowing us to branch out a little bit more, to think a little bit more broadly about our programming. Instead of, really trying to feature everything from 1 through 15 and 16 when it comes out, we will now start doing concerts that feature concentrations of various games, and they're going to allow us to do that. You may see in the future here, for instance, an all Nobu Distant Worlds, or a concentration of 7, 8, 9, or a concentration of 14 being a very big part of it. And even 16 as it comes out, we're talking to them about ways we can feature that as well. We'll give that some time for the game to get out there and see the popularity of the game and the music itself first. But I mean, these are the kinds of things that we're going to start looking at with Square Enix, and that's very exciting to me, because there's so much music in each one of these games, and fans have always come back to us and say, "Can you do more of this? Can you do more of this 9? Can you do more of 6?" And there's just, we're limited by the length of the concert period of time. We get one intermission and 2 hours to 2 hours and 15 minutes, that kind of thing, total length. So I'm constantly looking at literally the minutes for each score, and what we haven't done in Detroit for a while, what we haven't done in various places. So all of those things go into the decision making, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you had just mentioned Distant Worlds cresting 16 years of performing Final Fantasy music around the globe. In that time, what has surprised you the most about performing music from a video game?
Well, certainly the audiences are the greatest surprise. Initially, it was totally amazed when we did our very first, it was Dear Friends back in 2004, 2005. And I met Nobu for the first time, but I was totally amazed at the quality of the orchestrations, the arrangements, and the music compositions themselves. I mean, that just blew me away. I was not, a gamer in particular, but, there was a reputation for Final Fantasy, but the arrangement quality and the concert demands for the orchestra just totally blew me away. They were fantastic. They rank right up there with the best orchestra classical concerts. I've always said that, forward-thinking music directors of orchestras, if they wanted to bring in young video game players, aficionados of video game music, all they have to do is start adding some of the best scores to one of their regular or several of their regular classical subscription concerts. I mean, you could have a Carmina Burana and put One Winged Angel right next to it. You could do any number of things like that. And it certainly can live right on the concert hall stage next to something like that. And you would immediately have a tremendous amount of fans wanting to hear that. So again, I'm waiting for the forward-thinking music directors. I've talked to them because we can do as much as we can do. I mean, we can bring in people and sell out our concerts, but they're there for that. Getting them back in on future classical orchestra concerts, is the difficult task for music directors right now, and they're way behind the curve right now. They're COVID kind of pointed that out. They really need to build their audiences, and they're suffering, bringing people back in after COVID. So we're happy to do all we can to help them with that, but they have their own work cut out for them in that regard.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because one of the things about Distant Worlds that struck me when I first saw it. Of course, I am a video game fan, but I'm also a classical music fan, and just how the music is presented is, you're right in line with some of the best orchestra and symphonic concerts that I've been to myself. And I'm so glad you mentioned that because I would love to see some non-video game fans come out and discover the wonderful depth of music that exists in the Final Fantasy world. Arnie, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I can't wait to see the performance. Again, June 29th at Orchestra Hall. Tickets are available at DSO. Arnie Roth, the conductor of Distant Worlds, our guest here on WDET's 1UPdate. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.